Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tea Time. It's lemonade. Deal with it. Get over here. We're gonna focus on Legacy of the Void stuff, so we'll be skipping all of that. Protoss feels gimmicky compared to other races. So the idea over here is that it's because of warpins, and it seems we're seeing words like non-issue, overall, ifs, and things like that going on. So I think that the one thing that I want to add to this, and I feel like cheapening because we, like the chat and I, the JaKaTaK and I spent like 3 hours like considering this, is that there's more to it than warpins. The feeling of Protoss, the gimmicky feeling of Protoss, is more than just warpins, but warpins is a great start, and I think that once things get figured out with the warpins, those other gimmicky things are gonna start to float to the surface, and it's gonna be like, you know, these things feel gimmicky as well. And then perhaps we can address them. The Mothership Core and Photon Overcharge. There's not even an "and" in the title, technically speaking. The words Mothership and Core don't even belong in that title at all. Nothing about the Mothership Core is talked about. We talked about Photon Overcharge, which happens to be a spell that's currently on the Mothership Core, but it could be an ability or a spell that's anywhere else. Protoss in Starcraft 2 has always suffered from this problem of a centralization of power. And while it's true that the other races too, when they have their units together, they're stronger, there's symbiotic, things going on there. It's very exaggerated for the Protoss. Things like Guardian Shield, Recall, the Colossus, various things like that have all contributed to this thing that we call the Death Ball, the Protoss Death Ball. And it's very powerful and fantastic. The problem with Protoss having a hero unit, or a unit that you can only build one of, is that the consequences of having that kind of a unit means there's a lot of power packed into a small area. And again, it adds to the death ball. It adds to the centralization of Protoss power. Because if Protoss need the Mothership Core to be able to take engagements, or to be able to be cost efficient, then they also need to centralize all their power. And there are a lot of solutions to the problem of the centralization of power. One of them is messing with the abilities on the Mothership Core. But the problem is that it remains a disadvantage, a weakness of the Mothership Core, that you can only build one of them. And as a result, in order to make it worth building, it has to hold enough power. So even if you change the abilities on the Mothership Core to be less dependent on all the units being in one place at one time, there still is the problem of the physical location of the Mothership Core. Because you can only build one, it can only be in one location, and that essentially creates this centralization of power. It adds to it, right? And it's not the only thing, right? It's not, if you remove the Mothership Core, Protoss will be able to split up their units. Done. It's not that simple. The fact that Protoss relies on recall to be aggressive is, I think, a really uninteresting way to give Protoss the power to be aggressive. I think that power ought to be distributed through the gateway units. And that doesn't mean something as straightforward as, oh, let's just give Photon Overcharge to the Sentry or to the Stalker or to the Zealot. It's not something that it's that straightforward. It'll require a lot of creative thinking and a lot of trying things out and failing and trying things out again. But I think that what I feel is really important in this discussion is that we move away from Protoss having their power all centralized in one spot. And that means not having hero units, at least not this early in the game. Maybe you keep the Mothership around because it's like crazy and wild and cool, and maybe it's for casuals or something like that. Personally, I would even get rid of the Mothership, but I understand that from a fantasy standpoint, that's not going to work out because it's cool. And removing the Mothership wouldn't be this big deal. But the Mothership Core, I think, needs a fundamental change or a removal because of its hero attribute. We only have about 3 weeks left for major changes. I feel like this is a major change that if we started working on now, we could get to an amazing place by the time Legacy of the Void launches. So that's my petition. remove the Mothership Core or significantly alter it so much that it may as well not be called the Mothership Core anymore. Colossus. I really like what they're doing with the Colossus. It got nerfed to unusable areas, pretty much. Most of the pros kind of agree with that. It was once a unit you had to build no matter what. There's pretty much no way around it. And then it was a unit that you never built no matter what, how much you wanted to use it. And the balance is between having an option. If you don't want to build Colossus, if you don't want to do a Colossus style, you don't have to. There are other options available to you. But if the Colossus style suits you, you can go for a Colossus style. I still think the Colossus creates really deathball-y play. It's very uninteresting overall. But as far as this particular change, bringing the range back to 9, but keeping the damage nerf in place, I think is a really nice subtle way to maybe bring the Colossus back into the viability area without making it overrun the just always build a Colossus because it's ridiculous. Adept, they're super strong. They're getting nerfed. Pretty straightforward stuff. Really happy about it. Carrier interceptor behavior. There was a post by Lelouch that made 3 comparisons, unfortunately, to Brood War, which is not a good angle to go when suggesting changes. Brood War and Starcraft 2. And it said these 3 things that were different from one carrier to the next, and they made sort of the Brood War carrier this interesting unit to micro, a unit that required skill that was very powerful in the hands of very skilled players, but not as powerful in the A-movers' hands. There were 3 things pointed out. The thing that they mentioned here, the receptive to commands interceptors in between, like they don't have to go back in every time they get a new command after leaving leash range. That is being implemented. Actually, it's already in the patch, so go check it out. It's when the interceptors are on their way back to the carrier because you've moved the carrier out of leash range, you can resend them out. You can send them a command that will send them back out without having to go all the way in the carrier and all the way back again. Now, the final thing, we're one step away. We're one step away. The final thing that the carrier needs to be amazing, like it was in the days of Brood War, is called trailing interceptors. In Brood War, if you kept your carriers moving after releasing the interceptors would hang out outside the carrier. And they would like follow them. They just... And that meant if you could keep your carriers moving, when you made your attack, they would instantly all deploy instead of going one at a time, which is a really big difference. And it granted a lot of power to people who invested actions per minute and attention into their carriers, which was really cool. That's currently not available in StarCraft 2. It's not currently an attribute of the carrier in StarCraft 2. However, I have a feeling that part of it might also be due to the idea that trailing interceptors kind of look like a glitch, and maybe they were a glitch. Maybe that was never intended. They do, like they have this sort of little scuttling. What if the interceptors, if you kept your carriers moving, once the interceptors were out, they would like hover around, they would like circle around the carrier in like a cloud as long as you were moving them. And then if you stop them, they went back in the ship, but they were like, they were moving around, kind of like the Archon has those things that kind of swirl around it like an atom. Maybe the interceptors would do that. And then it would be this cool, very visual, very intentional idea. It would grant power to people who were using the carriers well, and the spectators could appreciate it and see what's going on. And even when you're playing the game, you're like, whoa, how do you make your carriers do that thing with the interceptors? It's like, oh, you just keep moving them. Oh, cool. I mean, players who are new would even just stumble upon that because they would attack something and move their carriers somewhere and they'd be like, oh, wow, they're doing this circulation thing around my carrier. That's kind of neat. So I really, really would like to see a response to that. I understand that is a small thing. It's not too big of a deal, but it's just my idea. I don't really think there are too many downsides to it. And, maybe you like it, and maybe we could implement it into Legacy of the Void for release, for beta, maybe after release. But, I'd like to get all of your opinions, Blizzard and humans, otherwise, not in Blizzard as well. What do you think about it? I really think it would be kind of cool. Immortal, going autocast by default. We're running into new territory here, or like deeper into old territory here, autocast. Autocast is getting used more and more. Now we have autocast in Jax, we have autocast Immortals, we've always had autocast Charge, Repair, autocast Interceptor, and I think it provides a really unique opportunity to make the game easier for players who are new, and to make, and then to still be able to reward players who are not new, who are pushing the edges and trying to get every little advantage they can. And I think that there are some problems with default, right? Always having a default autocast, right? So for example, right now injects are default on autocast. So as soon as you make a queen, it injects right away. So you don't have the option of laying a creep tumor. May not be a huge deal, but it is kind of frustrating. It feels like, hey, like I want to make a decision what I do with my first 25 energy. I would like to make a decision on that. I don't want to just have it happen. What I think, because of the rising number of autocast abilities, and I know this would be tons of work to do, and it might not be worth the investment, but maybe someday we can get it in. I'd really, really like the option to be able to choose my default autocast. Maybe I'm the kind of player, and by default, right, in the menu options, it would be all the noob friendly stuff. That's how you would start. But you could go into your menu and you could say, I want carriers to build interceptors autocast. I want workers to repair off autocast. I don't like that. Maybe you do. It is really kind of, maybe a personal preference kind of a thing, but you gear it by default to the new players, but you allow players to select and control exactly what they do. If it's possible, I'd really like that to happen. Again, maybe now, maybe on release, maybe after release, but I think that I think it's kind of a win-win for everyone. Ravager upgrade. This kind of came at it. Wow, this was cool. What a wild thing. At first I was like, oh man, 13 range is too much. But now that I'm thinking about it, the Siege Tank and the Ravager now have the same range. And the Siege Tank can be picked up by the medevac and moved around, just like the Ravager can move around and still have the siege range. I think it's still kind of, it's a lot of mineral and gas investment from the Terran to be able to have this mobile siege unit, where it's very, very small investment from the Zerg player to make Ravagers and at some point get the upgrade. The fact that it's being an upgrade and not an initial buff is kind of cool. It adds another choice, like Siege Ravagers. Oh man, you got the Siege upgrade for the Ravager. I think that, creates some interesting timings and builds and decisions, which is cool. But I'm unsure if 13 range is maybe too strong. And I think that the idea of messing with this is a kind of cool one overall. But currently maybe I think 13 range, maybe bring it down just to 12. I think would make a pretty large, reasonable difference. Further learnings from internal testing. So this is really the point where I felt as though I was being crushed by, an Ultralisk, but like very slowly, just sort of like I got knocked on the ground, Ultralisk tusk, and then it sort of just placed its paw, the Ultralisk paw, upon me and just slowly increased the weight over time until I died. That is what reading this paragraph felt like. We're talking about this paragraph right here where it says, we also looked into feedback suggesting that we reduce the efficiency of workers when more than one are mining a patch. I think it's important to think about is this effect going to be great for the game or not great for the game? Really, we're one level below that, and we're saying, is this change worth testing in the beta to find out if really it is better or worse in the game? An internal test is not enough data to decide whether or not it has a positive effect on the game. A couple of show matches, the double harvest mod, a few people playing the game, and with nothing really at stake is not enough. And I'm going to make a guess and say that there has been no single topic on the future of StarCraft, on potential changes of StarCraft, that has received more work, more hours put in by community members to attempt to explain, to provide good argument for the advantages of decreasing worker efficiency after the first worker per patch. Even the fact that the topic is titled reducing the number of workers per base so that army sizes become bigger. This is not the point at all. At all. That was not mentioned by the double harvest guys or me or the hot mineral harvest guys or people at Team Liquid or anything. I don't know where this is coming from. Like, the purpose of reducing the number of workers per base is not so that army sizes become bigger. It's to open up strategic potential for expansion play to counter turtle play. It is in the most simple, basic RTS elements. We have expansion play, we have aggression, and we have turtle play. And currently the expansion play is not really strong against the turtle play. So the turtle doesn't really have a whole lot of incentive to deal damage to the expansion player. The risk versus reward is not in favor of the expansion player. You take an expansion, but it's a much higher risk than the reward you get out of it. That is what's going on there. I wanted to make a video on it, and I regret so much that I didn't find the time to do so, but it is what it is. I understand that there are plenty of people who have, disagreements about that, and they think that Legacy of the Void economy is doing just fine, and I think that the Legacy of the Void economy is a really good step in the right direction. But really the core of the emotional reaction from me, the sort of the feeling, is just that it's not even good enough to get tested, to be put into the beta to try by the group of us. It really is unfortunate. But that's it, kind of given up trying to push for this. I feel like this is kind of a closing of the door. If it opens back up again, I'll be full bore, 100% all the way there, ready to talk about it again. But at this point, I think it's just time to move on and to let it go. And unfortunately, this opportunity is just going to pass us by for now, and hopefully we have a chance to give it a try another time.